Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Embedded TV, streaming live at swedishembedded.com/live. So go there and subscribe. Today we're going to be going over some really exciting stories. We have Microsoft that's finally accepting Linux into the ecosystem, and we're going to be seeing DirectX on Linux in very short future. And we're also going to be seeing Linux applications running on Windows through the Windows Linux subsystem, which is really exciting. Not that we care much, but it's still exciting that we are going to have better support for DirectX on Linux. Let's get started. First of all, I have a commercial from 1984 for the Apple Mac, and I think this is such an incredibly good commercial. It's like mind-blowing. Like, this was innovation by Apple in 1984. And by the way, since Steve Jobs died, I haven't seen any kind of innovation from Apple. That's a little bit sad. Maybe I should put my little Einstein here, because this really fits this video. Boom. Everybody's like, oh.
Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be.
1984. Let's play that again. And you'll see why 1984 wouldn't be like 1984. Isn't that amazing? Like, that's just so good. Fantastic commercial. Let's move on to the next story. And our next story is this completely useless little thing that plays music. And apparently somebody decided to build a lithophone. I never heard that word lithophone before. I didn't even know what that was until I saw this video. I mean, you know, coronavirus lockdown does create creativity. Like, it brings out creativity in people because they have to be creative, because otherwise life would be quite boring when we have such circumstances in the world today. But let's have a look at how this thing plays. And they've actually built this out of Arduinos. And it is actually pretty cool. Especially when you have this computer in the middle and basically like cable shielding that makes it look like a sun, I guess. It's actually quite relaxed. It's a little bit like it's a happy song, you know. It's like it's not sad at all. It's a perfect thing to do when you're in a quarantine. Like, somebody's obviously, you know, being creative. Fantastic. We're gonna move on to the next story. You can watch this video by searching robotic lithophone made using Arduino 2560. Yeah, that's enough. It's enough of fun and happy music. Let's move on. So we're gonna be seeing Linux GUI apps on Windows 10, and in parallel to that, we're gonna also be seeing DirectX for Linux, which is actually pretty good news. And it's fascinating to see how finally Microsoft has succumbed to open source and kind of, I think that, like, maybe in 10 years, Windows is actually going to be using the Linux kernel. That would be quite amazing, because then we could actually have a fully functioning system with all the applications that have been developed before still usable, but a far superior kernel in place, which would actually be pretty cool. So it's very positive developments, and it's going to be interesting to see how well this actually is going to be supported. Whether it will be one of these binary drivers that nobody can build from source code, or whether it will actually be a real implementation of DirectX for Linux, which is open source and free for anybody to extend and modify and improve. So looking forward to that. Let's move on to the next story. And this is an interesting video. This is a very long video. It's 1 hour and 12 minutes, but it's called The Lecture on the Z Transform. And for anybody who's working with signals on microcontrollers, if you're developing any kind of signal processing on microcontrollers, you'll be working in the Z domain. And it's good to understand how things like aliasing works. For example, if you sample a signal and you have a periodic signal and you sample it at the same time, and if you have a period that basically coincides with your sampling, you will actually see a DC signal. You will not see the periodic signal anymore. And these effects are good to keep in mind because they have implications on how well you can control a system. It's obviously not very good if you appear to see a DC signal when it's in fact not a DC signal. So quite an interesting lecture. I'm not going to go through it in the video because it's quite long, but you can look it up for yourself. It's called Lecture on the Z Transform. Moving on to the next story, and this is kind of related to all this latest stuff about conspiracy theories of when people are scared, when there is like a mass hysteria of some sort, then conspiracy theories automatically pop up, and it's like pouring gasoline on fire when people are scared, when the mass is scared, and you craft a conspiracy theory that's impossible to prove or disprove, it kind of it gets accepted and people start believing it. And especially when videos are banned, people actually interpret that as like a sign that this conspiracy theory is true. But it's quite fascinating to read about how the mind works, and it's very it's quite revealing when you think about it, that we're all influenced by stories, and it's the stories that we get influenced by. We don't get influenced by facts. It's mostly stories, and it's hard to like when we really live into the story. Like if you ever watch a movie that has a really good story, you kind of, in the moment at least, you're in that story, and it's a powerful effect. But it gets worse when it gets kind of taken for the real thing, you know. I mean, let's see if we had anything more here. Yeah, so for example, all this 5G stuff is really amazing how the 5G stuff has been perpetuating. Like 5G is the root of all problems in the world, and especially when people start creating this 5G, it's like a device that's supposed to like keep 5G away from you in a radius of 1 meter around, and it's like basically a box with a battery in it and a coil with clipped wires, and it's like a little diode. And like, it's surprising, but actually it's not surprising that people would believe that kind of thing actually would work for some reason. Like it's absolutely insane in a way, but nonetheless, it's a fascinating development how this 5G thing has really exploded on the internet in certain places on the internet. Like obviously not in all places. Like a lot of people still understand that there's a lot of bullshit in there, but in certain places people actually believe it, and it's fascinating. Anyway, moving on to the very good utility called Valgrind. If you've never used Valgrind before, you probably should have a look at it, because it's not only for checking memory, it's actually very good at checking concurrency errors. For example, if you're working with threads, Valgrind can show you where you're writing to a variable from multiple threads concurrently and you're not locking that data. And it's actually very good at finding those errors. But you can also analyze your code for bottlenecks. There's a whole bunch of metrics that you can get when you run your code through Valgrind. So it's perfect for C code, C++ code. It's basically for C and C++ code. And even if you're running some scripting language on top of C and C++, you can still use Valgrind to debug your scripting interpreter to make sure that it's working as it should and doesn't leak any memory. So check it out. Get it implement it into your build system as part of testing the code. It's very useful. We also have the open source smartphone, which is supposed to come out soon. I don't have very high expectations for something like this, because this has been we kind of seen the same story repeat itself. It's not anything new, but it's still interesting if this would actually look decently, if this would actually be a decently useful kind of device. And last but not least, we see a lot of good trends in remote working, and I think this is very positive. Remote work has been kind of going under the radar. People have been working remotely in a lot of places when, because like all programming work you can do remotely. It doesn't really require you to be in any specific particular place. But especially now with this, after this pandemic, it's actually becoming like the normal way of doing things, and that's really positive. I think that's going to benefit a lot of people, and it's going to benefit efficiency of how well we can work, because now we can do things remotely and we don't really need to be in any particular place just because somebody says so, because that's kind of the thing that was so common before. It's like it doesn't really make any sense, but just because everybody was doing it in a certain way, it was accepted as that's just how we do things. But when virus comes, or when something like this, like really disruptive happens, that's when people see that what they've been doing before doesn't really make any sense, and they start doing things in a new way, which is positive. So thank you for watching, and I'm really happy that you've been watching this. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're watching a replay of this. I'm streaming this live at swedishembedded.com/live. If you want to comment, you want to go there, you just go to swedishembedded.com/live. And you can also subscribe there. I will send you updates whenever I start streaming live. I need to actually fix my email system. I just remember that, so that those updates actually go out regularly. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.